We didn't eat pot stickers that evening, and Mother was thoughtful. Next day, we took the bus downtown, and she bought me a pair of jeans. In the same week, my brother made the baseball team of his junior high school. Father started taking driving lessons, and Mother discovered rummage sales. We soon got all the furniture we needed, plus a dartboard and a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. 14 hours later, we discovered that it was a 999-piece jigsaw puzzle. There was hope that the Lynns might become a normal American family after all. Then came our dinner at the Lakeview Restaurant. The Lakeview was an expensive restaurant, one of those places where a head waiter dressed in tails and conducted you to your seat, and the only light came from candles and flaming desserts. In one corner of the room, a lady harpist played tinkling melodies. Father wanted to celebrate because he had just been promoted. He worked for an electronics company, and after his English started improving, his supervisors decided to appoint him to a position more suited to his training. The promotion not only brought a higher salary, but was also a tremendous boost to his pride. Up to then, we had only eaten in Chinese restaurants, although my brother and I were becoming fond of hamburgers. My parents didn't care much for Western food other than chow mein, but this was a special occasion, and Father asked his co-workers to recommend a really elegant restaurant. So there we were at Lakeview, stumbling after the head waiter in the murky dining room. At our table, we were handed our menus, and they were so big that to read mine, I almost had to stand up again. But why bother? It was mostly in French anyway. Father, being an engineer, was always systematic. He took out a pocket French dictionary. They told me that most of the terms would be in French, so I came prepared. He even had a pocket flashlight, the size of a marking pen. While Mother held the flashlight over the menu, he looked up the items that were in French. Pt.2, he muttered. Let's see, pâté is paste, croûte is crust. A paste in crust. The waiter stood looking patient. I squirmed and died at least 50 times. At long last, Father gave up. Why don't we just order 4 complete dinners at random, he suggested. Isn't that risky? Asked Mother. The French eat some rather peculiar things, I've heard. A Chinese can eat anything a Frenchman can eat, Father declared. The soup arrived in a plate. How do you get soup up from the plate? I glanced at the other diners. But the ones at the nearby tables were not on their soup course, while the more distant ones were invisible in the darkness. Unfortunately, my parents studied books on Western etiquette before they came to America. Tilt your plate, whispered my mother. It's easier to spoon the soup up that way. She was right. Tilting the plate did the trick. But the etiquette book didn't say anything about what you did after the soup reached your lips. As any respectable Chinese knows, the correct way to eat your soup is to slurp. This helps to cool the liquid and prevent you from burning your lips. It also shows your appreciation. We showed our appreciation. Sloop went my father. Sloop went my mother. Sloop, sloop went my brother, who was the hungriest. The lady harpist stopped playing to take a rest, and in the silence, our family's consumption of soup suddenly seemed unnaturally loud. You know how it sounds on a rocky beach when the tide goes out and the water drains from all the little pools? They go sloop, sloop, sloop. That was the Lin family eating soup. At the next table, a waiter was pouring wine. Then a large sloop reached him. He froze. The bottle continued to pour, and the red wine flooded the tabletop and into the lap of a customer. Even the customer didn't notice anything at first, being also hypnotized by the slurp, slurp, slurp. It was too much. I need to go to the toilet, I mumbled, jumping to my feet. A waiter, sensing my urgency, quickly directed me to the ladies' room. I splashed cold water on my burning face, and as I dried myself with a paper towel, I stared in the mirror. In this perfumed ladies' room, with its pink and silver wallpaper and marbled sinks, I looked completely out of place. What was I doing here? What was our family doing in Lakeview Restaurant in America? The door to the ladies' room opened. A woman came in and glanced curiously at me. I retreated into one of the toilet cubicles and latched the door. Time passed, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour. Then I heard the door open again and my mother's voice. "Are you in there? You're not sick, are you?" There was real concern in her voice. A girl can't leave her family just because they slurp their soup. Besides, the toilet cubicle had a few drawbacks as the permanent residence. "I'm all right," I said, undoing the latch. Mother didn't tell me how the rest of the dinner went, and I didn't want to know. In the weeks following, I managed to push the whole thing into the back of my mind, where it jumped out at me only a few times a day. Even now, I turn hot all over when I think of the Lakeview Restaurant. But by the time we had been in this country for 3 months, our family was definitely making progress toward becoming Americanized. I remember my parents' first PTA meeting. Father wore a neat suit and tie, and Mother put on her first pair of high heels. She stumbled only once. They met my homeroom teacher and beamed as she told them that I would make honor roll at the rate I was going. Of course, Chinese etiquette forced my father to say that I was a very stupid girl, and Mother to protest that the teacher was showing favoritism toward me. But I could tell they were both very proud. The day came when my parents announced they wanted to give a dinner party. We had invited Chinese friends to eat with us before, but this dinner party was going to be different. In addition to a Chinese American family, we were going to invite the Gleasons. "Gee, I can hardly wait to have dinner at your house," Meg said to me. "I just love Chinese food." That was a relief. Mother was a good cook, but I wasn't sure if people who ate sour cream would also eat chicken gizzards stewed in soy sauce. Mother decided not to take a chance with chicken gizzards. Since we had Western guests, she set the table with large dinner plates, which we never used in Chinese meals. In fact, we didn't use individual plates at all. We picked up food from the platters in the middle of the table and brought it directly to our rice bowls. Following the practice of Chinese American restaurants, Mother also placed large serving spoons on the platter. The dinner started well. Mrs. Gleason exclaimed that the beautifully arranged dishes of food, the colorful candied fruit, in the sweet and sour pork dish, the noodle-thin shreds of chicken meat stir-fried with tiny peas, and the glistening pink prawns in the ginger sauce. At first, I was too busy enjoying my food to notice how the guests were doing, but soon I remembered my duties. Sometimes guests were too polite to help themselves, and you had to serve them with more food. I glanced at Meg to see if she needed more food, and my eyes nearly popped out at the sight of her plate. It was piled with food. The sweet and sour meat pushed right against the chicken shreds, and the chicken sauce ran into the prawns. She had been taking food from a second dish before she finished eating her helping from the first. Horrified, I turned to look at Mrs. Gleason. She was dumping rice out of her bowl and putting it on the dinner plate. Then she ladled prawns and gravy on top of the rice and mixed everything together the way you mix sand, gravel, and cement to make concrete. I couldn't bear to look any longer, and I turned to Mr. Gleason. He was chasing a pea around his plate. Several times he got it to the edge, but when he tried to pick it up with his chopsticks, it rolled toward the center of the plate again. Finally, he put down his chopsticks and picked up the pea with his fingers. He really did. A grown man. All of us, our family, and the Chinese guests stopped eating to watch the activities of the Gleasons. I wanted to giggle. Then I caught my mother's eyes on me. She frowned and shook her head slightly, and I understood the message. The Gleasons were not used to Chinese ways, and they were just coping the best they could. For some reason, I thought of celery strings. When the main courses were finished, Mother brought out a platter of fruit. I hope you weren't expecting a sweet dessert, she said. Since the Chinese don't eat dessert, I didn't think to prepare any. Oh, I couldn't possibly eat dessert, cried Mrs. Gleason. I'm simply stuffed. Meg had different ideas. When the table was cleared, she announced that she and I were going for a walk. I don't know about you, but I feel like dessert, she told me when we were outside. Come on, there's a Dairy Queen down the street. I could use a big chocolate milkshake. Although I didn't really want anything to eat, I insisted on paying for the milkshakes. After all, I was still hostess. Meg got her large chocolate milkshake, and I had a small one. Even so, she was finishing hers while I was only half done. Toward the end, she pulled hard on her straws and went slurp, slurp. Do you always slurp when you eat a milkshake? I asked before I could stop myself. Meg grinned. Sure, all Americans slurp.